For years, my home was always filled with a sense of mystery. From the outside, my parents' marriage seemed like a loving, patient relationship. But as I grew older, I realized something was missing. My father was always harsh with my mother, belittling her with his words and actions, while she silently endured it all. He never hit her or had addictions like alcohol, gambling, or smoking, but he was a man who would lose his temper over anything. He was angry and dissatisfied with everything. There were moments when I asked my mother, "Why don't you leave him?" and she would always answer with a mixture of fear and resignation, "People like us don't leave." She had no economic freedom, no one to support her, and of course, there was always the fear of what others would think. She believed there was no other way. But sometimes, the cracks in a woman's soul grow so deep that even silence can no longer heal them. One day, everything changed. About 20 days ago, my mother's behavior began to raise red flags. Something was different, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. My father had started coming home late, and my mother seemed preoccupied with her phone. She was constantly on it, sometimes smiling, sometimes turning the screen quickly away when I passed by. I knew something was off, but I didn't know exactly what. One night, I had an overwhelming feeling that I needed to look at her phone, so I did. And that night, everything came to light. What I saw on the screen froze me. The words my father had never said to my mother, he was now saying to another woman. My love, sweetheart, honey, all the sweet things he had never told my mother, he was telling her. This woman wasn't just some stranger, she was someone he had taken on trips out of town. My mind started racing. Why hadn't I noticed this before? Why hadn't my mother said anything? In one conversation, I noticed my father saying something that struck me, "In 2.5 years, we will be free." At that moment, everything clicked. My father, despite his family, was building a life with another woman. The realization was painful, but it was a truth I had to face. My mother, who had always been silent, had endured this betrayal in her own way. And this woman, she knew my mother was married with children. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep this betrayal went. One day, I confronted my mother. "Why did you never say anything?" I asked her. Her eyes were filled with sorrow as she softly responded, "How could I tell you this? Sometimes, a woman's love and passion are stronger than everything else, but I didn't want to hurt you." In that moment, I understood. For years, my mother had silently carried the weight of this secret. She had seen the cracks in their relationship, but the fear of leaving and the inability to stand on her own had kept her trapped. The most shocking part of this whole story, however, was how my father continued with his life as if nothing had happened. He maintained his relationship with the woman, flaunting it on social media, acting as if the family he had betrayed was simply an afterthought. My mother, who had spent so many years sacrificing her happiness, had now become a woman lost in the emptiness of her own life. One night, alone with my thoughts, I made a decision. My mother had suffered in silence for years, and it was time to help her find her voice again. I wasn't going to let this story end in betrayal and silence. One day, I would sit down with her and talk about everything. I knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the truth. Because no matter how deeply a woman hides her pain, the truth always finds a way to surface.